You're doing great back there. We have a whole team, a whole staff here. Guys, keep it down. Keep it down. We're about to start.
Quiet on set.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi and welcome everyone to another episode of Dance to the Music. Thank you everyone for listening via Spotify and all the other platforms there are, as well as watching on YouTube. If you haven't hit the buttons, aka follow and subscribe buttons, please do so. Thank you very much. My guest today is I could do all the introductions right now and just keep it simple. None other than Toribio. Hi.
Hello.
AKA Caesar.
Yeah.
How would you like me to address you? I don't know
However
how
you
people
prefer.
call you.
People call me Caesar, but my artist name is
It's
Toribio, which is my
Toribio,
last
just
name. Yeah.
Oh, so it's Caesar Toribio.
Yeah. It's my full government.
Giving out governments. Got it. So welcome. Thank you for coming and taking the time.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
How you feeling?
Feeling good.
Good.
Feeling energized. Had some coffee and stuff. I'm happy to be here. This is
Thank you, thank you.
What is it? Long time, first time. Long time watcher, first time caller.
That's right. You just told me
Yeah.
you watched every single one, which I don't know if I could say that about a lot of people. So thank you.
Yeah,
I
of course.
appreciate that. I think, or I'm aware you're originally from Florida, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And you are like grew up with music, as far as I'm informed. But just to give you a little introduction, would you like to give me a short one? It's like where do you grew up and how music influenced you, or what part of music played when you growing up in
of
Florida?
course. So I grew up in Tampa, Florida, to Dominican parents. So I'm the first American. That's first generation, right? Yeah,
I think
that's what I think of it. So on my mother's side, my grandfather, he's a pastor. He's like a Christian evangelical pastor, Dominican, right? So what happened was, I'll give the long story. I'll give
Please.
yeah. So in DR we had a dictator named Trujillo, from the 30s all the way up to like 63, I think, or something like that. And I guess my grandfather was a great preacher in the capital in Santo Domingo, and the Trujillo had some goons come to him and be like, Trujillo wants you to be the pastor of the chaplain of the army. And my abuelo was like, okay, let me just think about it, and give me like a week. And they're like, all right, we're gonna come back, but you can't say no. And I guess my grandmother was pregnant with one of my uncles. My mom was already there, and my grandfather went to New York. He came straight to New York City. This is probably like right before the 70s. Yeah, exactly. And then he came here, and they came back and they kept on asking my grandmother, like, where's Danilo? And she's like, oh, he's out. I don't know where he is, whatever. And then after he found some work, he moved here. He brought the whole family. And so my whole family came, on my mom's side, came to the Bronx. And so basically, I'm going to cut it a little short. So like from there, once they got here safe, there's a whole migration of a lot of Dominicans that came to New York and to the States, same with Puerto Ricans and stuff. My grandfather and another family friend, they made a migration they went to Rochester, then they went to Jersey City, then they went to Tampa, which is not what it is now. And because of that, there's a whole like community of Dominicans that came from DR through New York and New Jersey and landed in Florida. And so there's like multiple families there.
Okay.
Yeah, we all grew up together. So it's like my actual cousins, and then people who I call my cousins too, like, oh, it's because like my mom grew up with their mom in New Jersey, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So that being said, my grandfather had a church in Tampa, and by the time I was born, I loved going to church. Like my parents didn't go to church, my grandparents did, obviously. And that's where I learned music. Like at a young age, I was singing. My sister sings, she's older than me. And she's like she's the singer of the family. She's an amazing singer. And then I would always have to sing harmonies with her. So we would always sing, and then we sing in the church. And that's where I learned how to play drums. And I taught myself piano there, and that's where it all started. And in the church, it was like a Dominican church. It was like a Dominican church in the United States. So we'd also do, when we got to, by the time I was like in middle school, I became the drummer. So we're doing gospel shit too. So like Kirk Franklin, Fred Hammond, all of this kind of stuff, but then also doing Dominican, even like Dominican covers of this shit, or like Latin stuff. So that's where I got to learn. It was a great music formation for me. So it's like learning, like, this is how you play cumbia. These are the rhythms for that. This is the rhythm for merengue. This is salsa. This is that shit, and then this is gospel. This is funk. This is like at a young age, and that's what got me started into that. And then just naturally I got out of the church because I went to high school. I went to like a performing arts high school, and I got into jazz. And so I went to like a black high school, like almost like, what a HBCU is?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like almost like that, but a high school. So it was like one of the first, like, only of two black high schools that like reopened later and became a performing arts high school. So in that tradition, it was like a HBCU marching band. So like our school was a feeder to FAMU. So I like, when I saw that, I was like, this is my shit. Like, so I was like, I stopped going to the church, and I was like jazz, drumline, and then classical music and all that shit. And then from there I went to college for music.
Okay. So since you just mentioned you went straight to college, was there ever in all those years you growing up ever a thought of not pursuing music? Or was it because it's just such a, not even, I guess people say second nature, but was there ever anything that, no?
I never thought that, I knew I was going to do music at a young age. I have like a vivid, I'll say it, I don't care. I had a vivid moment where I was just like, I realized, like, this is when I was young. I was probably like in 6th grade, where it was like for the younger kids, we had like a youth service, and they were like, go ahead and ask God what you want to do with your life or whatever. And I sat and prayed, and I was like, I was so innocent. And I was like, just tell me. I'm here. I'm hoping to hear him. Never heard him. But
Never heard
but in to me, I was like, yeah, music. That's so I remember that vividly, a moment that, like, but even before then, I was just like, music was the only thing that just made, like, always made sense. And like, yeah, second nature is a great way to put it. It's just like being able to transcend at such a young age. Like, oh, this is like a normal, get to tap into a spiritual thing at a very young age. And it was like, oh yeah, this is how real you can feel, So I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. There's moments where I was like, I thought I'd play, as a Dominican boy being out, I think I'm gonna play baseball, but I wasn't good.
Yeah. So when you went to college or university, I don't know, same to me.
Same to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your goal? It says, I studied music, but what specifically did you study? And then did you have any specific goals with, like, I'm gonna go to school for this and that and graduate, and then I'm gonna do such and such?
So what I went into with college, I didn't leave with, basically. So quickly, so my sister, she had like little moments. She wanted like to sing in the Latin pop industry, and so she had moments where she, like, she would meet somebody, then something would fall through, and then something else would happen, like that kind of shit. One point she met this guy, Eddie Perez, who was the producer who produced
what's her name?
Lumadi.
Yeah, I just said it in German, but nobody noticed.
So they were working on an EP, and for my sister, and so we would go to Miami so often, and then I was with him. For me, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to produce. Like, this is cool, like seeing it, And I remember, I think I was getting ready to go to college or something. So I guess I must have been, or I don't know. And he was like, what do you want to do? He's like, oh, cool, you're gonna go to Berkeley, like. And I was like, oh, I want to study production. He's like, don't study production. He's like, you don't need to study that. I didn't study that. Like, we need, like, you should do like music business or music law. We need lawyers and shit like that, which is so funny, which is a meme now, but it was told to me then. So, um, I was also like, by the time I was um, finishing high school, I was like heavy into jazz, like such a jazz head. Like when if you would ask like 17-year-old Caesar, is like I just want to swing with the jazz cats, daddy o, and then I'll teach at a university jazz. Like that was like what I was gonna do, you know. I wanted so I when I was going into school, I was like, I'm gonna do, I'm, you know, me and my sister were the first people to go to college. My parents didn't. I think my mom finished high school. My dad finished eighth grade. You know, um, so they couldn't orient me on how to apply, where to do all this shit. I had to figure all that shit out. Um, when I went in there, I was like, all right, I'm gonna do a double major because, all right, maybe I should do music business and then have a business degree to fall back on, and then I'm gonna do jazz composition. So that's what I started with, and then after a few semesters of jazz comp, I was like, this isn't exactly what I like because it was like it takes the fun out of everything and it's too technical. And I was like, really, what I want to learn is how to produce. And then in Berkeley, they have at the time it's called music production and engineering. That's like a very intense major. And if you do a double major, there's another one with like electronic synthesis, and like that's a 5-year program, and it's like you don't really have a life because it's like very intense. So I couldn't really do music production and music business because it's kind of like one or the other. But they had this other major called contemporary writing and production, which was like basically glorified jingle writing.
Okay.
And so that's what that I got to learn production and all the shit I wanted to. But it's like you get to learn how to do it yourself, you know. As like I'm not learning how to. If I could go back, I would have just done music production because then I don't like you don't teach you how to like how to use a board and what mics are best to use for drums and vocals and all this shit. And they taught me like, all right, here's these programs, here's Pro Tools, here's Digital Performer. Today's assignment is going to be like you're going to make a 30-second score for this thing, or make something that sounds like the Beatles but that isn't, and see how good you can do it, that kind of stuff. And I'm sorry, I'm like long-winded, but so at the end of my college career, I studied abroad in Spain,
Nice. Where did you go in Spain?
in Valencia
Okay.
and Ibiza, which is how I got into house music. But
Cool. My
we'll get
follow-up
there.
question.
Yeah.
We'll get there at some point.
But after that, like when I got back, I was like, because I was doing 2 majors, it was 5 years, and I was like, fuck this shit. Like I was like, after living in Spain and like working, and I was like, and they're like, man, I got like 2 more semesters of this bullshit, and it was like, I remember being in class because I finished my music business degree, and then I had all was left was the CWP, contemporary writing production, and I was in one of the classes, and then it was just like such stupid like voice leading, like, oh, what note should the trombone? And I was like, fuck off, like, and I had to do big band writing too, and then I had to do another one next semester, big band writing, and I was like, when was the last time you saw a big band? Exactly. So I'm not gonna use this, right? I'm not gonna be able to work with this, So I dropped it. So I graduated early with 1 degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, 1 degree is more degree than I have.
Yeah.
And many other people too. Okay, cool. So that's a crazy story. Now, you said while you were still in school, you were also studying abroad in Valencia. And it's interesting because that's one of I've never been to Spain. Just a side note, because I'm always like, oh, that's interesting. Now I have another person I could ask, what is the city about? Because I've heard many things. And you said, like the English call it Ibiza,
Ibiza,
horror.
yeah.
But so tell me about the experience, like, because I was going to ask you how, because, you have a varied musical knowledge based on how you grew up and what you played and learned. And I'm assuming, like, being a teenager, there was Miami bass around as well.
Absolutely.
But like house music, and it's not necessarily, well, Berkeley's is up there on the
It's in
East
Boston,
Coast.
yeah.
So I wouldn't consider it as like a house. I know there's a community there.
Yeah.
So my guess would have been like how you went out there maybe when you went to school, but like how exactly, like when's the first time you I think there's a song, right? When it's the first time you remember house or
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Well, there's before I studied abroad, um, there was this. When I was there at school, it was like at the height of like the EDM bubble. So
Okay.
there was a lot of that shit happening. But there was also this afters club called Rise, which I think was there for a long time before. It was like legendary, I guess, in Boston. Um, and I saw Richie Houghton there.
Oh,
But
okay.
even before that, I think I studied abroad before that. I can't remember the um, the timeline. So like, yeah, when I first, yeah, I grew up hearing bass and all that stuff. I think what really like put me onto it was when I lived in Ibiza, and so like when I was over there, when I was studying abroad in Valencia, I had to do an internship with Live Nation, and one of the it was me and another student, and we had to choose between someone staying in Barcelona and someone going to Ibiza. I've been to Barcelona. I have family that lives in Madrid, so I was like, I've never been to Ibiza. I want to go there. He didn't want to go to Ibiza. I was like, perfect, cool. So when I went to Ibiza, so what it was like there was this festival, a failed festival that only happened this one year. I got to learn a lot. So this the main promoter in Ibiza, or like this big hotshot, who is the main promoter of Live Nation Spain. His name was Pino Saglioco, and he uh, was like one of the partners too for one of these big clubs. It was either Amnesia, I think it was Amnesia or Privilege. It's one of these like big outdoor open air. I never went. So his idea was like, he's like, oh, I got a brilliant idea. We're gonna do the first Rocktronic festival, and he was like, we're gonna call it Ibiza 123, and it's gonna be on like the first, second, and third of like July or June, and each day is gonna have a rock headliner and a electronic headliner, and then they're gonna have people in between, and we're gonna do it in San Antonio, and which is like the north part of the island, which is like you've never been, right? So the way I would describe it, it's like the Jersey Shore of all of Europe. Like
Lovely.
all of the worst people from all of these countries, all the people that are from the Jersey of Italy, of Germany, and London or the UK, they all come there and they're just like, yeah, let's fuck and let's do all the drugs and let's party.
Shout out to Jersey though.
Yeah. Shout out to Jersey. I mean, when I mean Jersey Shore, I mean like the show Jersey Shore. What was I gonna say? Sorry, one second.
And you said that festival failed, or like,
Yeah, the festival was a bad idea because, and this is all hindsight. Like his idea was like, it's gonna start. It's gonna start at noon, and then because of noise ordinances, they have to stop by midnight. Um, yeah. So the idea was to have the festival, right? To have Rocktronic, and his idea was to have it from noon to like whatever, midnight or whatever. And the idea was like they were planning to have like 15,000 people. It ended up being like 5,000. And because it's San Antonio, which is like the most touristy, and they're all like 18-year-old, whatever, like they're not getting up till like 3 in the afternoon, So no one was there for the first like few hours. And then the headliners he chose, because he's an older cat, like he was like friends with like Michael Jackson and all the like Elton. So it was like one of like each day it was like Elton John, David Guetta, yeah, Lenny Kravitz, and like Tiesto, and then like Sting, which I was like sick. And then
doesn't sound too bad, but I can also imagine it won't
it
won't
just
be too
doesn't
great.
make sense. It's like
Yeah.
cool. It's like yeah, all the rock headliners are not rock headliners that 18-year-olds want. It's like their parents would be more excited about this
Exactly.
than they
yeah.
would. And then you have like the top EDM ticket sellers or whatever that are already playing in
All the other clubs.
Yeah,
did
they're
it
already
with-
playing in the clubs. So it's like, you want to see. I don't want to see David Guetta ever, but it's like, would you rather see David Guetta for like an hour on a stage, or would you rather go see him at Pasha and do all the drugs that you want to do there, whatever? I learned a lot there. It was cool. That being said, because I speak Spanish, I had such a different experience, and I got to really know people who are from the island, and I didn't go to that shit. I didn't go to any of the clubs or anything. I got to play basketball with all the DJs on Tuesdays.
Oh, that's so dope.
Yeah, and I didn't know who they were. I was just talking shit, because I'm the only American there that's like, and they're all like European and shorter, and I'm just like, slap that shit out. I'm like, play some D, motherfucker, let's go, And I find out it's like Luciano, who's like a big like Ibiza DJ.
Oh, wait, he had a hit back in the day.
He
I
did.
feel like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I can't remember the name
I'm
of the
playing
song.
with him and all this shit, and I was like, oh, and I'm like waiting at the bus, and I'm like, and I see his name, like Luciano at fucking Ushuaia, and I'm like, that's the one that couldn't play the last Tuesday, bro. All of that is to say, so I'm getting there. It was a really like life-changing experience for me, for sure. Like being around so much different things and meeting these people and working with the people also I worked with too on the island. They do the IMS, the International Music Summit, which is like a thing they do over there. I remember one time I had to take a cab so I was staying in Ibiza town, which is on the other side, to San Antonio, to the site. And I was taking a cab, and on the radio's sick, actually, in Ibiza. Like the radio stations.
Yeah, they have a couple of
Yeah,
them.
they have
I think,
and they're pretty dope. And I remember hearing something on there, and I got to tell him this. And I was like, I heard, and I was like, what is this music? I was like, this is like house music I like. And it was Theo Parrish.
Wow,
Yeah.
so dope.
Yeah, and I was like, wait, there's music happening in here. There's something happening in here, because like, if I can preface this, I found out in my life, later on, it's just like the moment you think you know something, at that moment is the exact moment you stop learning about it. You know what I mean? And so if you think like I coming from a jazz, as though house music, I know house music goes, that's when I stopped learning about it, right? Because I think I know it, and so why am I going to look further? So it's like always good to be open, and know that you know nothing, and you'll know more. So at that moment, I was like, whoa, what is this? Like, and that's what that opened up the rabbit hole, and then I got into like a bunch of shit, and I heard shit I liked, and I heard shit I didn't like, and then I found my pocket of just like, yeah, when I was just like, oh man, like I want to do house, and I want to do and use all these rhythms that I studied as a drummer and a Latin drummer. And I was like, oh, Oshunladi already did that, and he's one of my favorites, and like, so did Louis and Kenny Dope and all these people, and then connecting the dots with what I already grew up with too. Like you hear that, especially in Florida. Yeah, like, yeah, this is a bass and house that was on the radio and any King Say you went to, but also, also, side note, with like, it blew my mind in my journey realizing La India was India, because a lot of people don't know this. Like it's like very separated. Like La India is one of the biggest salsa artists ever. She's like the torch. There was like a concert where the torch was passed to her from Celia Cruz. So
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, people don't know that. So like I've always grew up listening. Like that's my heart. Like. Sunday morning, like my mom's cleaning, we're gonna put that shit on, and you got to do shit.
So, stupid question on my part. How did you feel, or when did you find out when Tito Puente is Louis Vega's uncle?
No, Hector Lavoe.
Hector Lavoe. I'm so sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm Hector Lavoe.
I was like, this all makes. I was like, it was like that period in my life when I was like, what? And then what? And he was married to India, and what? And like his like, I was like, when I explain it to other people that don't know, just for like, it's just like, if Marvin Gaye is to Motown, is what Hector Lavoe is to Fania Records,
Not Tito Puente, okay?
Yeah. Well, so that's a valid thing to say because he's amazing too. But yeah, and then I realized that, and I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. Like it was like, for me, it blew my mind. And then also seeing, which was inspiring too, is like the being in so many different worlds at once, you know, and legitimately.
Yeah.
As an immigrant, you can relate to that too, right? You know,
A little bit, yeah.
for me as being a child of immigrant too, it's just like, there's a whole cliche saying. It's just like ni de aquí, ni de allá. You're not from here, neither from there.
Yeah.
You know,
You'll always be a guest.
but
Kind of, sort of.
for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But I had to train myself to think it's just like I'm both. I'm not neither, nor I'm both. You know, and there's a lot of us. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, with that, it's cool to see musically someone like Louis Vega. That's why he's like, someone I admire a lot too, because it's like, oh, freestyle, making new genres, house, and like he's salsa royalty, we digress. I don't know. But anyways, but that's how I got into house music. Like seriously, when I was like, oh, from then on, I was like, that's all I'm focused on,
Oh, okay, that's a very interesting story. So I want to go now back then to the point where you moved to New York. Is that right after you finished school? Okay, so how did you find your how should I ask that question? How did you find your place, not place, but your community in Brooklyn? You moved straight to Brooklyn, or
No.
like to New York? Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Because I've to New York,
Yeah.
right? Wherever you ended up. Reason I'm asking, maybe I'm going all the way around in circles now, but I think sometimes we think it's easy to find our place in New York because there's number one, there's so much happening. We can find out about so many things happening, right? Via socials or like just the way we are connected. But at the same time, because there's so many things happening, I think it's equally difficult, especially for young people, to maybe find,
where they fit in.
Exactly, yeah. Like you said, at that point you found exactly what you want to do and like the sound that you like. But I'm still like, you knew Louis Vega is from New York, but like, how did
I
you
get to the point to like,
or like find the right parties
Yeah.
or the parties that you like,
Yeah. So
I hope that question made sense.
it makes perfect sense, and there's a couple points I want to touch, and I hope I can touch all of them. The first thing I'll say was just like, Boston sucks. I'm gonna say that.
Laughing, I've never been
Hey,
to
make
Boston.
that. This is gonna be the clip. Boston sucks. I got more hot takes for you. Just keep watching. No, I'm just joking, but not really. So every weekend not every weekend, but a lot of weekends I would just come to New York. One of my best friends at the time, he was a native New Yorker too. And so I would come, and also I have family here. As a proper Dominican, you have family here. Yeah. My family, they lived in the Heights. My dad, when he came to the country for the first time, he came to the Heights. And then now my family that lived in New York, they live in New Jersey. They live right across the river in East New York. And I would come all these weekends, and through that, I inherited friends, like my New York friends that are like all artists. They all either went to like Beacon or LaGuardia High School. And I would just be chilling with them and all that. And so I was like, when it came time to like finish school, I was like, I'm already in New York. I'm already gonna go there. I've already performed in New York I played at SOBs in Arlene's Grocery at the Lesson a couple times. You know what I mean? So I knew I was gonna go there. So I first moved to the Heights, as you do, as a Dominican. You're like, no shit.
You cannot leave out the Heights.
Yeah. No, I loved it there, man. I wish I could still stay there. It's just like for everything that you do that's in Brooklyn, it's just like you take the train for a couple months and you're like after at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. So basically I'm giving you some intel. I don't like to tell a lot of people, but I'm gonna tell. I don't care. I was doing internships trying to figure out how I'm gonna get a job. I got to stay on my friend's house in the Bronx, and then I stayed in in Williamsburg on Kent and Fifth before all that shit was built. In a loft. I was interning for what is Matt Projects, which is like what they did. They do La Luna Festival, and I was like one of their first interns. And I used to intern Lower East Side, and then I was interning at Pasha, New York.
Okay.
because I got the internship because when I was interviewing, one of the guys that works there, James, man, James is a good guy. He was always nice. Uh, he he's from the UK, but he just moved to New York from the Pasha Ibiza. And so,
Oh.
and I was like, and he was like, oh, you was just over there. And I was like, yeah. He's like, you know Simon? I was like, yeah, man, I was just with Simon. He was like, oh man, yeah. We started talking. And I was like, all right, word. So I got that internship. And then basically from there, through my friend Emerus, who was like, she got the job. I was like her assistant. I got a job there. And so that's why I ended up working. I worked in Pasha for the first year, for
Wow.
1 year. Um, and for me, that was such a, right under Rob Fernandez. I don't know if you were familiar with Rob Fernandez, rest in peace.
Not quite sure. No, I've only went. I have to be honest. I only went to Pasha a couple of times. That was pretty much when I moved here in '05 or '06, so a
Yeah.
long time ago.
Yeah. Rob Fernandez was like a legendary promoter. Um, and is like, he's a very influential person in the night scene, in the dance scene, in the nightlife. I think he had yeah, I don't care. I think he had like at one point he was like very friendly with Frankie Knuckles. Uh, like he's been around for he did everything. He was like he's done everything in nightlife. Like he was like a dancer, a door person.
There's many of
Yeah, which I think honestly, if you're gonna do any business, to do it right, you should do every single thing.
exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, and he did that. So he was the best promoter in New York, and because of that, arguably one of the most important promoters in the world. And through him, he was such a hard ass. He was mean, but everything he said was valid, which is so annoying. Where he would just be like, "Yeah, this is why you're not good, and this is why you're never going to be good because you are." And you're like, "You're right, but you don't have to be mean." But it was great to learn through him because through him is where I learned the city and the scenes. So, like,
Okay.
I was in charge of the promoters for this club. And we had like I don't know, maybe like 100 to 150 different promoters, and then that's where I realized like, okay, this Friday we're gonna have Chris Vargas. He plays like this kind of tech house. You got to hit the Colombians, and the Colombians live in Queens. And this is, and then there's this party that's happening at Cielo and Oscar G. Like, so we're gonna cross promote. And like, I learned like, okay, Colombians like tech house, and they live in Queens, and the trance they like this, and this is that. This is where the parties they get to go to Webster Hall or what, you know what I mean, all this shit. And I had to at one point I had like a page where like a sheet for every before like I used RA, but even more like I knew every week what was happening. Like I had to know like every club and even venues because this was like towards the end of Pasha. So they were just blaming everyone for everything, and they were just like, "Well, how come you didn't bring 20, 100 people?" And it's just like, "Well, you should go to. Is there a fucking hostel on Amsterdam and fucking 110th?" It's just like, cool. Well, you need to go over there and give them free Pasha tickets and like that kind of shit. So I had to know like, okay, these are the people over here. These are if you like this kind of, I don't know, live show that's happening here, you probably might want to go to the after party at Pasha that's right here. All that kind of stuff. So through that, and that's where I met one of my best friends, Paulie Raffaelli.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And that's where I start. That's where like through him too, like it was like, no shade to everyone that was there, but it's just like I knew clearly like I'm coming here to do music. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I know that's my goal, and I'm gonna try to do jobs that align with that. And so in this space, Paulie was the only one that was like, "Hey, man, like you're not a piece of shit, and uh, you like dope
God
shit."
bless him. Yeah. There's not many. There's a lot of people who just
Yeah,
who are either mean or who just like don't fuck with you
yeah,
if they don't know
yeah,
you.
exactly. He was like always nice, and it was like, "Oh, cool. Like you like Theo Parrish too. Cool. Like we're only and so like this is like when Boiler Room was kind of tight, and it was like actual. You would have to get like an email, and I remember he took me to go see fucking Full Circle Francois K and Justin Strauss and Faulty DL at like it was 1040 Metro. It was like it was like in the era of when there wasn't as many clubs, so it was a bunch of warehouses. And this is like a warehouse that was like, what is East Williamsburg, you know? Through that, I started meeting people and finding like what I like and what I don't like. And I went to all the afters, and after a while, I'm like, no one here likes music. Uh, after you do it so many times, I lived in an after spot. I lived at Taffy. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh wow.
Um, I lived in like a punk loft with a bunch of artists for like 3 years, you know?
You really did the whole New York program.
Absolutely. I have no, you know, that's another thing I wanted to mention too is just like, you know, I'm not born in New York, but I am a New Yorker.
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't choose where you're born. And also it's kind of absurd to think that you're better than somebody because you're because you were born somewhere. You know what I mean? It's kind of American. That's very American.
Very.
You know what I mean? Or it's just like, and then it's just like New York is just like, it's like your parents are Dominican. We're displaced first off, like you know, uh, and also it's like, but I also understand. Also, what happens here happens everywhere. It just happens here quicker, right? So like, what the gentrification, this process, um, what will happen in a neighborhood within 2 years will happen in like 10 years in Cleveland or in Tampa. Like it's happening in Tampa now, you know? Like my high school that I went to in that neighborhood was like in the hood, in the projects. What's different there is that they completely demolished the projects. They don't even exist anymore. They pushed them out, and those are high rises, and there's like, and it's like crazy, you know what I mean? So it happens everywhere. So I understand also the anger of being like, you're here, you're taking away what is my, you know, I understand. But it's like, it's a process that um, that happens everywhere, and I don't know. Like I feel like, at least for me, when I come into a space, it's not taking from. It's first seeing what's going on and how I can contribute. And this is my home. You know, that's how I feel. And it's a lot harder to pick up your shit from somewhere else and go start somewhere. You know, so you have to think about that. And there's always New York has always been there, and there's a lot of art movements that have been a bunch of people that weren't native New Yorkers. You know, because it doesn't matter. It's just like, what can you contribute? What do you do? Like, and don't be a piece of shit. You know what I mean? And then move fast.
Yeah, it's very simple. But
Yeah, you know, and speak to people and be a neighbor. And you know, actually, there's a community here. You know.
right. Oh God, there's so many things we could talk about. I'm
Yeah.
trying to hit all of them. I don't. Oh yeah, my clock is on my phone, which is my camera, so I can't really tell. But out of those parties, right? So clearly, I don't even know where to start. But since we're on the topic of parties, right, and you went to many and so many different ones, I want to talk about your party BDA. What it stands for, yes, we all know, but like how, at what point did you, I'm not sure if this is not your first party that you run by yourself, or like that's your party, but my question is like, how did it come about? At what point were you like, I want to throw this party is going to have that name, and like, you know, again, to contribute to the community? Or like sometimes things happen because you see something's lacking in
Absolutely.
a community.
So when I was first here, it was like, again, in that era where it wasn't as many clubs. Like Output wasn't here yet. If there was clubs, they weren't in Brooklyn yet. You know, I think Bossa just opened up maybe, and it was still the warehouse thing. And so I feel like that's what a lot of people miss too. Is like what a party is. It was just like, it was like, okay, it was like your thing. You had to like buy the or rent the sound, do that kind of stuff. It wasn't just a night in a club. And so I realized that if I've been DJing for already like 4 years at that point. I learned in school.
We didn't even talk about that, but yeah. Okay.
And I was living in this punk loft, and me and my best friend at the time, Alex Suarez, who puts out music as Cien Fuegos. He's put out some releases on Lies and stuff like that. Very dope, like more on the experimental. We went to college together, and so we went into this together too, you know. And he found his like his thing, and he's dope. He's a dope performer on the more industrial techno type style of things, but infuses Afro-Cuban like sentiments with it, and rhythms. He's dope. Check him out. But anyways, me and him, we were living at this at 538 Johnson, which is um, which has been a punk institution for like since the early 2000s. I never grew up with punk shit, so for me, I'm like,
Neither
cool,
did
cheap,
I.
cheap rent. It was cool for me. It was opening me up to like a whole nother world and seeing like these people are cool. Like my ignorance was like, oh, these people are all racist because you think skinheads, and they're like,
Right,
oh no, they're
right.
like the anti that. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, everyone's cool and the music's fun, the energy's fun, which definitely influenced the music I make. But in that, we have this big loft where it's been a place where people do punk shows forever. And we had a stage and all that. And I was like, we should do parties. I want to do parties here, because I don't have an outlet. No one knows who I am. You know what I mean? I have friends. Um, Let me do something so I can bring my friends. Obviously, the venue so I can, so I have a place we can do it. And so we go. And the name of the party was actually the Conclave. So Conclave was a party first that me and Alex did because I had that concept already. And so we did a couple. We would do it, and they were incredible. Like people would come. They were like incredible nights, and it would just be us doing everything, and it was really special. And for everyone that would go there, it was like it's a crazy. It's like industrial part of Bushwick before any of that shit was there. And the halls were all filled with graffiti. It looked like 5 points. And then our neighbors had a fucking half pipe in their fucking in their living room, and it was like, oh, crazy. And then we're having a party here. So people would come, and we built something starting from that. Me and Alex decided to like just focus on other things, and I kept on doing the party. And then basically from through different friends, I would say like, or if I was playing at somewhere, remember Cameo Gallery? I don't know if you remember. It was
No,
a
I don't
place in
think so.
Williamsburg too. Like, it was a venue, but also they would do like nights there. JDH would do his fixed parties there. I'd be like, hey, I'd write on Facebook like, hey, bring that ass to fucking Cameo tonight. I'm gonna be there and everything. I guess I'd say something, people liked it, and they were like, you should call your party that. And I was like, okay, like, fuck it. I guess I couldn't think of anything more, and I was like, this is funny enough, and I wanted to be playful and, um, like not take itself too serious, and also be fun. So that's where I got the name for that. But I started from actually doing these parties in that warehouse. So I had to get the alcohol. One of my roommates would do the fucking bar. We charged a cover. You know what I mean? And it was just like that's how I learned how to do that. And then from there, things started opening up. And then we played at Bassa for the first time, and then we played at Cameo, and then I remember playing at Output for the first time, and then like from there things were built. But I always tried to keep the BDA like as a consistent thing. It changed different names before, but then when I finally kept, I was like, let me just keep BDA and keep this as a thing. And then I had my roommate, one of my 7 roommates, uh, 7 roommates, 1 bathroom, and I had no windows for 3 years. But it was the biggest room I ever had. And I had like my little studio set up there too. So
All the horrors in one.
yeah,
I could
it was great for when you're in your 20s. You're like, hey
exactly.
man, I got drunk and did drugs on fucking Tuesday, man. I'm crazy. um,
So the party is still running, and what is the part? Not what the party means to you, but like what does it stand for? Because you have so many different musical projects, if I can
yeah.
call it
Mhm.
that. We're gonna talk about another one after, but what does BDA
Yeah.
stand for? Like if you had to describe it.
Oh, yeah. I think about this a lot, and I've been very intentional with how I want to like express these kind of things, because like I feel like it was a frivolous way to come up with a party name, right? But what I do is not frivolous. Um, and so I had to think about like my whole like the whole purpose of it. BDA is a command, right? The whole tagline is like, bring that ass and your feet will follow, right? From Parliament Funkadelic. I took that from them. And if people know, they know. And people that don't know, I love getting like once every 6 months, someone's like, yo, and they find the record. And I'm like, yeah, welcome. Um, I started like, I was like, I really wanted to make it a music centered party, because I'm someone as a musician that has like a lot of knowledge in different types of music and stuff. I don't like to think about, especially in a DJ night, of genres. I know everyone says that, but it's all, I think of music specifically as a holistic thing, and there's many different ways to express it. There's, for me, there's singing, there's DJing, there's dancing, there's producing, there's, and it's one big thing. And sometimes I do this one, and sometimes I do that one. You know what I mean? And I get better at this one, and I get better at that one. So my whole thing is like music. So I added like music is the focus, but with the two T's. But that ass is the barometer. So bring that ass, and your feet will follow. So the whole thing is like it's for people that, because at the same time, I still don't want it to. It's serious, but I don't want it to be just serious. And I used the example of Thelonious Monk. He was I don't know if you're familiar. He's a famous jazz, very influential jazz pianist for me. My IG is like a joke on that. Toribio Monk, right? Where his music was very avant-garde at the time, and a lot of people shout out it at the moment because it was very. The words they would use is like angular. It was very unorthodox. It was playful, but it was serious as hell. And I don't think those have to be mutually exclusive. You know what I mean? You can, I think that's what makes that juxtaposition of silly but serious happening at the same time. I think is powerful and can bring out a lot of emotions, that stay with you. And that's like the ethos of that, where it's just like, it's a party at the end of the day. We're not, we're not the military. We're not trying to like do, this is music, and this is the most serious thing in my life, music, and I'm not doing this half-assedly.
Yeah.
I'm doing this, and I'm gonna touch all of these things. So in that night, you're gonna hear, booty music. You're gonna hear me play Kaya, My Neck, My Back at some point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're gonna hear the acapella on something. You're gonna hear jazz. You're gonna hear house. You're gonna hear techno. You're gonna hear acid. You're gonna hear funk. You're gonna hear disco. You're gonna hear all of these things. But it's like the whole thing is to see how it's all connected. And I think about it musically, how rhythmically or melodically these things are connected. That's what I do when I DJ. And then also it's just like, and then thus connecting the people that are in the same room, in a playful but yet intentional way.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So you also, I don't want to like do it this way, but it's all interconnected with you. But there, you also have, or for a couple of years now, your public service event.
Mhm.
It's a party, but I'd rather call it event in that
Mhm.
case, which you do with Mickey Perez.
Yeah.
Um, and this one is mostly outdoors. I think you've done indoors as well, right?
Mhm.
So you can describe it better than I do, but outdoors in the summer in New York City is what we all love to do, right? It's free. So I can only imagine that you're not getting or making any money because sound permits, all the things cost money. Um, what inspired you to do that, given the fact that there's already a lot of outdoor parties, more than I think used to be
Mhm.
in the summer? Yeah, how did that come about? There's another question I have. I just gotta read it first, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So shout out to Mickey, DJ Mickey
Shout out
Perez.
to
That's my
Mickey
brother.
Perez. Yes.
So me and Mickey, we align just as people, and then also just as DJs and music lovers. So we had been talking and dwelling on this, on doing some sort of outdoor party. And then this was like, I think right before the pandemic happened. And then the pandemic happened, and then we're like, all right, well, when we come back, we got to do this. And so we had an iteration at one point, because our friend Felipe, shout out to Felipe, who owns, he goes by Felipe from Beat Gay. He does, he owns Milagrosa.
Ah, okay.
Cerveceria in La Superior, who's a homie. He's also a great DJ and a great person. We obviously didn't have any money because we were in COVID and we're all, musicians. He had a system.
Sorry, I'm not. This
Yeah,
is not funny,
it
but the
is.
way you
It's
just said,
real.
I'm a musician.
He had a system, and me and Mickey had already been talking about it, and it just happened to coincide where Felipe wanted to do a party. He had a system, and so we were like, let's do a block party in front of his place because the street was closed. And we did it like 3 times, and the cops shut it down, and it was incredible, just from word of mouth and just it happening, and it was so powerful at that moment. The first one, I remember like literally seeing, I get chills, man. People were crying, man, because we'd been fucking locked
It's
away
a
for like,
different time,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and they got to feel something, and they get to see people that they didn't think they would see, and get to feel something again, and it was just like, oh man, this is so powerful. The cops shut us down because we didn't know anything. We had to get permits and all this shit. Felipe runs so many businesses, so he got too busy. Uh, After we only did it 3, right, and they were like incredible. Like it grew to I don't know how many people, maybe like easily like a good 500 people. Like from like 200 to 300 and then to 500, and it was just like, okay, that's where the cops came and all this shit. Me and Mickey were like, all right, next year we got to do this shit, and we got to do this shit right. So we're like, let's do this in parks, because these are public spaces and we don't have to shut down the street. And let's just see what happens. And so we just finished our 3rd year. So we started 3 years ago. And we decided, I think I came up with a name. We should call it public service, because this is what it's about. It's not, the whole intent of this is not even to like, it's not going to be a DJ night or DJ, you know what I mean? It's not even about that. It's about literally this feeling. And what we've come into is like one of the most important things I'm doing in my life. It gives purpose, because on a deeper level, what we're dealing with here is like, you're in a public space that we have less and less access to. I feel like in New York City,
Yeah.
we don't really have a lot of access to places as we should, and we're doing something that is natural to New York City, since before hip hop, you know, um, and what's so powerful about it is that you have so many different. First off, what the park means. The whole reason why the park
Yeah.
exists, especially in like Central Park, is just like it's a place where everyone can come.
Mhm.
It's everyone's allowed here, no matter if you are sane or insane, or if you are straight or poor, rich, like we can all enjoy the same park, And so at the same time, you have so many different walks of life that get to come, and there's people that came already knowing, and there's people that just happen to be there, and we all get to experience such a feeling at the same time. We get to touch this feeling, this like, at the same time, and I feel like I'm never going to be an activist in a real sense. That's not my passion,
Yeah.
respect to the people that do. But I think when you get to get so many different people from all walks of life to feel something at the same time, that causes some sort of internal change.
Yeah, for sure.
And for some people it happens quicker or more or less, but you get to touch something all at once. And with that, if we can all come together and feel something at the same time, and we can cause change to happen within each other, then I think if we can connect further, that's when the revolution comes, we can just pass. Like we're already connected, That's where I can. This world is, especially right now, is just like they're benefiting from dividing us more. This is like, if I can make it happen, and the only way I know since I was a kid is music. That's how I can do it. And I found a way after honing in on my craft for so long. And it's the most powerful and selfless thing too, because we don't make any money,
Right.
We do it solely because how powerful this is. And what makes it so special too is that people know that. And that's what everyone comes, and there's more people that come. This last one was incredible. I think there was probably like 1,000 people that came,
That's crazy.
And God bless Carl, because Carl built this sound system, and he's honestly one of the most beautiful people I've ever come to know. Like one of the most genuine, giving people, unpretentious, like he looks like Jesus. He's like
Shout out to Carl.
Shout out to Carl, Carlala Music, Carlala sound system. With that, it's grown to be what I was gonna say is like people see how organic it is and genuine it is, and in a place in a world where it's just like the more you see on your Instagram, you know that shit is fake, but we still believe some of it. But it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, like, this shit is not fake. Yeah, they're just literally there's two dance circles happening, and they're voguing, and these people are going in right now, and they're having a moment, and this one's crying, and these two are kissing, and this is all happening. This is not.
Yeah. Do you, because my question would have been like, do you think what it is that makes it so special? But you already touched on certain points, the park, the public space aspect of it, the fact that it's free. Do you think that if you would charge something, which in a public space I don't think you can, but if you would try to do it somewhere else, right, where you maybe get a bigger space, or if you would do it in any other setting than the one you're doing it now, do you think it would change that of the feeling of what you just talked about?
The feeling wouldn't change. The feeling wouldn't change. The setting would change, and certain things would change because of that. One thing I forgot to mention that I love about this is that it's a day party,
Right.
and that there's kids there, and I love that because the kids, just their presence, is just so organic and genuine that you get to be around.
Yeah.
And whether you are conscious of it or not, it affects you. You
Yeah,
know,
no, for sure.
and
They have a different kind of energy.
yeah, and exactly. And also they're almost like a I love kids also, but it's just like it's almost like a social shield where it's just like, yeah, you can't be fucking off and doing ketamine right now, bro. Like there's fucking little kids. This isn't that. This isn't that. All right. This isn't the afters, you know? Which is so powerful, which is like also why I love doing that. And there's all ages too, you know? All. But the only thing that feeling is I got to talk to Michelle Saunders. She's like a friend. She's incredible. She's a light. She's a beam of light. She's an incredible human. And I asked her because she was friends with Larry Levan, and she's an amazing dancer, and she's like very influential. And she was talking about how she would dance at the garage, and it didn't matter. Like if no one cared, like if it was gay or straight, like no one even thought about that. We're like now people are using the identity politics as something to matter in these spaces too, which is like, I'm not saying your identity doesn't matter. I'm saying the focus, music is the focus. The reason why people were there was to dance to the music. It wasn't like, hey, let's go over here as queer people in a queer, it was just like, no, Larry's gonna tear it up. And there was gay people, and all of that is to say, she was like, that feeling is what brought us there. Because that feeling was so, and she was like, what you guys are doing is a continuation of that. Where a lot of people get lost and they're like, well, nothing was like that. It's like, it's the same. It's that same frequency. It's the same feeling that's happening. So the feeling, now what would happen, and we're thinking about doing it in different indoor spaces. Like I think we've built an actual community, you know? We've had a lot of people that just volunteer. I've had people come that have never come, that come volunteer on their first day, and they create like solid like friend groups, you know? I think we have an actual real organic community, and my goal is to make it even further. Like eventually I want to like have like a newsletter where it's just like, oh, we're giving dance lessons here. Like you can sign up. Oh, you need babysitters. Hey, this person's sick. Can we donate to this? Like I want it to be like an actual community like that. All of that is to say is like, we have the community. So I think if we do it at another space, I think they understand this is not about making money. We've only lost money, but what we've gained is not, you can't gauge it really, on that rubric, you know? And we will charge money, but it won't be to make money. It'll be like, hey, if we can get this many people to pay whatever, $10, $20, then I think we can cover costs, you know? And people are so down and willing to donate. We've been doing this all on donations, you know? Yeah. And people help donate, and we've been keeping afloat because of that, you know? And so I don't think, what would change because of that though, is that the random people, you know?
Yeah, not even
and all ages would change.
Yeah.
Because there's a few spaces that we have access to in New York City where I can't just be like, hey, can I just have this place from Sunday from 3 to 9? Oh yeah, cool. It's like you have $4,000. It's like, no, cool. Oh, we have to sell alcohol to make that money. Okay, we can't have kids here. Okay, you know, that changes things. But that energy, the reason why people come into that room doesn't change, you know, and thus what happens there won't, you know?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to next year.
Yeah.
Or soon.
Me too.
When
Hopefully,
it's warm.
Yeah.
Talking about in October when it's still warm. But out of, and there's so many more. We haven't even talked about, even though you mentioned the name Conclave, we haven't even talked about that and your production side of things. I'm wondering, out of all those different projects, do you have a favorite one, or is it depending on the day, or like depending on what the intention is for each one of them? Because this question is coming for someone that's not a trained musician, that's solely a DJ and has like other maybe one or two side projects, but you have so many and they all involve music where you actively participate. And as some other guests have described it as like wearing different hats, depending on the day. Again, me as someone who's not a musician, I can only think of it as being extremely challenging to balance every single one, because on one days you have to concentrate on this one and on the next day it's the other one. So how do you make sure that they all kind of stay afloat, and like still work to the extent that they do?
That is such a wise perception you have, because I'm still trying to figure that out, and it is hard to figure out how to do all of these things. And the way I'm doing it right now is trying to navigate. This is my period. I'm focusing on this. This is my period. I'm focusing on that. One thing I'll say is, like, when you have first off, respect to anyone that has a band. Like, a band is, especially now, is so hard. It's so much more expensive. People don't want to pay as much and all this shit. And you know how hard it is to get like fucking whatever 5 pot smoking musicians to show up on time, and then know what the fuck they're supposed to play, and then rehearse it, and then we gotta do this next week, and don't forget it, So respect, and then you come to the show and like they sound like that. Like, respect to every band you see, For me, it's hard. There's been times, so when we put out the album, my project Conclave, we had to like play live. I don't have a favorite thing that I do. Like I said, all of music is a holistic thing, and there's just different sprouts on it. And whichever one I'm doing then is my favorite. You know what I mean? Because like if you ask me right now, I'm like, I'm loving DJing right now. I'm focusing on this shit. But when I start rehearsing with the band and playing with the band, I'm like, oh man, I forgot how much I love this shit. Because it's a different thing where you get to, it's a special thing when you get to communicate with sound and frequencies and rhythm, and you get to with a group of people, and we get to lock in onto one thing, and we feel that, and we're emitting that to other people organically. That's a special thing, and you're finding new things, you're improvising.
Yeah.
You get so much out of it. It's like that. That's something that DJ won't let me do. And so that's why I love doing that, and that's I'm not gonna stop doing that. So what I'm doing right now is like I'm finishing the next album. Then when I finish that, then it's time to tour. Then I got to start rehearsing that shit. Probably have to like do a little bit less DJ gigs and start boosting the band gigs more, And then there's a point where they overlap. That's what happened last time. That's what I was gonna say. It's just like, and it was hard. It was like my first time playing nowadays, so I couldn't say no. But it's also, we had a Conclave gig in fucking Gowanus, and we did the gig, and it was incredible. We sounded great. It was cool. And then I had to like rush and put all of my equipment in my car, and then I had to go run to fucking Nowadays with my records.
Oh, wow.
And then play for another like 4 hours, and it was incredible. This is like, for me, this is my life. I love it. This fills me. It's hard. It's not easy, but yeah, this is what I should be doing, and this is what I want to do. Yep.
So since you said you're putting out the new album, that's a new Conclave album, and that's coming in 25.
Yeah.
Okay. Just thinking when this is coming out, so people can know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, that was basically it.
Okay, cool. I want to. I think you mentioned really, really briefly. Actually, let's stay here really quickly, because one of my questions is, and it might sound corny, but I'm wondering, again, with all these different projects, being somebody that has to be the promoter, even if you only have one project, you have to be the promoter, the content creator, and the DJ and the producer and everything. How do you stay sane in, I guess, industry is kind of call it,
Yeah,
and not to, I can't I can't imagine you stepping away from music, right? Being how ingrained it is in you. But I'm sometimes there's people that just be like, oh, I'm not gonna listen to a record today. I'm just gonna sit in silence for whatever.
I've had that.
Um, but that's I guess for you personally that you do in your home. But then again, you have to do so many different things that are unrelated to the music itself, but they are related to your project.
Hmm.
Sorry, long-winded question, but how do you again control everything and not really just lose your mind?
That's a really good question. There was a moment where I was close, and I might have, and I brought it back. There was like, especially there is times where there had been times where I'm like, yeah, I don't want to listen to things. You have to be okay, and it took a while, especially being a son of immigrants and stuff. Um, with thinking of things in like periods and cycles, you know, when I was like working at Black Flamingo and I only had those 2 days off a week, and I was like spending 12 hours in the studio every time, and then COVID helped me realize, have time and be like, remember all the time that you wanted? Here you have it. And it's like also like, oh, how nice it is to like let the song finish itself in a way, and I don't have to finish it and be like, oh, it's done now. Um, and then knowing, being okay with the cycles of being like, and then right now, like for instance, like I took a break of working on music for the past month. I've just been intaking more as opposed to pushing out, and making.
Does that let me interject it real quick? Does that happen where you say intentionally, I'm gonna not make music this month. I'm gonna go digging and I'm just gonna intake, or do you feel that already naturally coming where
Yeah,
whatever feels better at that moment?
it's a natural tendency that I feel, and I have to be okay. What I have to be intentional about is being okay with it. And that it's like, hey, yeah, like you don't have to go and force and work on something right now. You know, you take, Bobby McFerrin. Have you heard of Bobby McFerrin? He's an amazing vocal. He has times, he did like a clinic at school and he was talking about how he has times where he just doesn't listen to music at all for like months at a time. And yeah, you have to think about that. It's just like what you're intaking, take a moment. It's like it's fasting. It's like resetting your gut with nutrition. You have to do that spiritually and musically, and I had to come to terms with that and realize that and be okay. But the important thing that you talk about is just like all the other shit that you have to do around that, which is something I'm navigating and have learned. And it's been such a process, because for better, for worse, it's just pros and cons. There's so many good things that we have, and that we don't have to have so much money to promote art. You know how sick it is when I worked at Posture. This is at the end of that era. It's like I had to be in charge. I had to have street teams hand out flyers, you know, and like that's how you. That's one of the ways that you had to like. You know how easy it is that we don't have to even get out of our fucking couch. You can just put it on your Instagram and people can know, you know.
Yeah.
But with that is the con of just like now you have to be on here all the fucking time and watch all this. We should, we should have never. We should. There's like a meme of that. It's like we should not know this many people's thoughts. We were not
Yeah.
meant for this.
Yeah, and there's in on top of at least for me the relation of like how well whatever post story format whatever it does on here does not necessarily equate that actual physical thing that it's supposed to promote.
Yeah, and how many followers you have on here does not equate to the value you are as a human, and then even as a musician or a DJ,
Yeah.
and that you have to learn that. I've learned that, and there's things. So I've learned. The pandemic was a good process for me. I had to go through a lot. Like I went through like a depression, especially seeing a bunch of. I'm gonna be real. Like everyone has this kind of shit where you're like, this person is doing this shit, and it's
We
just like
all
not
have
me.
it.
Like what, and being comfortable and realizing I had to come to it. It helped. One time I was on acid and it was like coming down and like thinking about, and I got to like analyze myself and like what it is like you have to separate what is scene shit, like is this or is this music, you know? And most of the time the shit that's bothering me is scene shit, like who took a picture with who is, you know what I mean? Who went to, as opposed to being like look how good this music. Sometimes that's good to have. Like, damn, this person made the song I wish I made. Like, cool, that's good, you know. But most of it is like 90% of it is the scene shit. And I was like, okay, so now I know this is the issue. I know how what I need to focus on. Don't get angry, and then let's diminish this. Let's do less of this. Let's hide these stories. Let's push this away. Let's delete these people. Because what are you? Because you're intaking a lot of this information. You know, I don't have that perfect of putting my phone down. I don't have the self control yet. You know what I mean?
Neither have I.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because we're both adults, and I can just imagine how that if like it affects us being adults, being creatives that are generally considered very sensitive people,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we have to, you know, deal with again the things that are not necessarily sensitive. It's all like you said, scene,
Mhm.
entertainment, industry, the business side of things
Yeah.
that are not related to music, but yes, don't
They're
have.
adjacent. They
Yeah.
overlap sometimes, but it doesn't mean you conflate that. You know, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, and it's just like, oh, it's not. And so I understand, and being comfortable, it's a little bit easier once you get a little bit of validation when people recognize you get these opportunities to understand that like my path is my own, and there's no one that is out there doing what I do, you know, um, and being comfortable with that, and like the path that I'm taking is not going to look exactly like theirs, and so it's gonna be a little bit different, and where I'm headed is going to be a little bit different, and being comfortable with it. It takes a lot of patience sometimes because there's times things happen, things flare up, and um, yeah, I have to like give myself grace. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's just it's something to think about. It's also hard because you know I talked to my cousin Guario who takes all the pictures. You know he's Guario. Oh, Mario takes Mario and Guario.
Takes pictures. I was like, Mario, no.
My cousin Guario takes. He does a lot of. He's an amazing photographer, and he does a lot of. He does like all the love injection photography. Um, and he was telling me he was like he only goes on Instagram once a week, and I'm like I wish, but it's just like he's like no, you can do that, but I'm like honestly, as a DJ and a musician and stuff, like I get work from this shit. I have to be on there, you know.
Even if your email is in your profile,
Yeah.
people still DM you.
DM
So,
you know. So I'm just trying. I'm still trying to find that balance.
yeah,
You know.
I found it's a question to related to what we just spoke about. I want to bring up an example that I remember after I thought I saw an interview that I read again about where you talk or whoever interviewed you, they were talking about one of your songs was used at a fashion show in Paris. Which, by the way, congratulations! It was a
Hermes.
year, yes,
Yeah, it was 2 years ago
2 years ago,
or last
and,
year.
And when I read the interview, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. So I think you put that up. It's like, oh wow, it's crazy that a brand like MS can find my music and use it on such a platform, but here in New York, I can't even get a response to an
For
email.
an email, yeah.
To an email, which is crazy, but yeah, it all happened. And then it also mentions that I guess your manager mentioned, you shouldn't have posted that,
Yeah.
but you said, oh, but that got really, people responded to that. And I bring up that example because I also have instances where I share my thoughts and be emotional and be like, you know, and it can read as spicy, and some people will recommend, you shouldn't let your emotions, run your Instagram, or like, don't put it up there, da, da, da. But those are always a post or whatever replies that I get from the peers or people that think exactly the same.
Yeah.
And I get like responses of like, yeah, the same, da, 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 da. I'm just the one who says it, I guess. That's how I always see it. So again, I'm using this as an example because I'm always wondering. Yeah, because I'm always wondering if we all think this, not all, obviously, but if as a community that all think the same, have the same experiences, obviously. In person, we have the same conversations over and over again with different people. What is there a way to change things? Or
That's
what
such
can
a
we
good question.
do? Or what can we do for? Because at the end of the day, it's like, okay, we all know there's a problem, or like we all hate using either the platform or how the things work, but we all have to play along and play the game because that it is what it is.
It's time to play the game.
Yeah, but but I'm like, but it's so fucked up. I don't like. Is there something that you think like besides everyone not using Instagram anymore? I'm wondering like, does the industry need to be more professional and actually respond to emails, or you know what I mean? There's so many elements that play into it, but at the end of the day,
This is such a good question.
yeah, and,
This
and
is
I have no answer to
this is such a good question. I think this might be the best question you've ever asked.
it.
Uh, is because you make a good point. It's just like, yeah, if we're not going to talk about it or do anything about it, how do we expect anything to change, right?
Exactly.
Now, when it comes to me saying stuff like that, and I've had to curb things like that because you do have to understand. There's been times where emotions get the best of you, and you put things up, and I don't think that's the best time to do that. For me, say for me.
Yeah.
So I'll try to sit with this the way I feel and be like, oh, and sometimes it ends up being better because then it's just like I get to like let a week pass and be like, do I still feel this way? Yeah, no, man, actually, and then let me actually put this in a different way where I don't sound like an entitled asshole or sound like like I don't know, some victim, or you know what I mean, or like everything in between. It's just like, oh, how can I express this more clearly? I think also, side note, just thinking about that question too, is just like I've noticed that a lot of the things that got the most sometimes, most of the time, a lot of the things that get the most attention are negative things.
Yeah.
And what people like to like for that when that happened, like a lot of people were like, who was it? Who said it? And like they just want to be like, yeah, man, same, yeah, fuck them, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just like sometimes you need that. You do that with your friends, but it's also
Yeah.
that when you do that enough, you're gonna just attract negativity, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it took a friend with another post I made, something like that, an emotional post in my Instagram career, where I didn't realize that some people they're like, hey, there's people out here that look up to you and like they're looking at you. You think people don't see you, and I still feel that way because you look at I play at the lot once a month, and you look at it, it's like this is like 30 views, or I also noticed too. It's just like just a side note too. It's just like there's so many people that see your shit but they won't like or comment. But there's probably like if you got whatever 100 likes, there's probably like 7,000 people that saw that shit that don't that have that in their mind. Um, and is it negative? I think I think what's important is to if you feel a type of way to definitely talk and speak up. I think the emotion, it can be individual, right? Of whether you think you should speak emotionally or not. I think for me personally, it's better to hold that down, and you can express these things, in a better way. I try to express the things that I feel like a lot of people feel, and my whole thing is I don't want to attract negativity because people like that,
Yeah. People feed off of
they
that. I
feed off of
think.
that, and then
Yeah.
you end up being that, and you're like, oh wait, then your neural fucking pathways get the dopamine from everyone, and you're like, oh, let me do this again. Before you know it, this can lead to like 6 months from now, and you're like, oh, this crabby ass fucking Mariella, like, oh yeah, and you're like, wait, I wasn't a
I
crabby.
am crabby though. I'm not-
But you don't want to attract
yeah,
more of
yeah.
that and feed that, So I want to feed light, and I want to emanate that, and take in more of that, So just finding a way of we do need to express the things that we
Yeah,
want to
like
see
I don't
change,
know, like a top.
but it needs to be productive in a way, as because there's too much performative
Yeah.
activism on the internet, and nothing really happens. Me personally, I think it's even better. You can state these things. For me, it's good. It's validating to see so many people respond. But I'm the kind of person that's just like, if I've grown to realize that, like, if I have a problem with somebody, I'm gonna try to talk to them in real life first. This is real community, And most of these people that own, most of them, not all of them, most of the people that own venues are like normal people. And having been worked at a venue for 5 years and know what the back end is like people don't understand because they've never worked. Most of these people have never worked in the service industry or on the back end, and then like these people they're not millionaires. Some of them are, but most of them are, and they're just normal people, and they're not perfect. And you can tell them, hey man, and I try to do that. I try to do that because I've been here enough, and I think I've built a solid reputation for myself. Where I think if I came up to somebody and be like, "Hey, I have a problem with the way you do this," they will see it's like I'm not just trying to be a dick or something. It's like, um, yeah,
Yeah. No, that's a good answer. I guess we always have to start with ourselves
yeah,
first of all. I just brought it up because it's just such a yeah, it's bigger than just us, but we have to start with us. I guess.
exactly,
This
yeah.
sounds corny, but it's the truth.
It's the truth,
It's the
man.
truth. Um, all right, going with something lighter.
Hmm.
And it's one of the few questions. Since you DJ a lot these days, as you say, you go up,
Hmm.
sometimes more, sometimes less. But I wonder, what do you have a favorite? I don't want to say party because I think I know which one it is. Um, like a favorite party experience, because that doesn't define like the actual party.
Party experience of me being there or playing.
Both could be one and the same.
Yeah, like all right. I'm just thinking of like being, like one of the first few times going to the loft and hearing the time get it up and hearing level 42 Star Child, um and actually like just feeling something and like dancing and feeling like I'm in a place that is uh alive, like moving, like current. At the same time I feel like it's old, you know it's at the same time it's both things.
Yeah.
um Going to Santos Party House 718 sessions, that birthed me too. Like, damn, bro. I remember walking. I'm getting chills thinking about that right now, man. I took a video of that and I look at it every now and then.
I
Uh,
forgot that 718 was at Santos. Yeah, that's
that
true.
was so dope there, man. The sound was great. The people were on fire. I saw literally people climbing the fucking columns and like slapping. And I was like, man, I've never seen this in like the way Danny plays too. Um, Danny Krivet, like how you can play the record. That was like the first time I heard someone play a record. You know what I mean? Where you can like bring out things and like try to make this 3D. Um, playing wise. Also, seeing Theo Parrish at that one warehouse party. I think it was like 2015. Were you there? It was like in. Yeah, I don't know if that was the year. It was around there. Kat and Jackie did it. Analog Soul. Um, and it was at this warehouse before everything is there. Now there's a bunch of shit there. Um, and he played everything, and he blew my mind. And um, he played till like 9 in the morning. Uh, and that was like people still talk about that. I was just watching an interview of Theo's. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
someone
yeah,
mentioned it, and I was
yeah.
like, I know I'm not bugging. Like this was 10 years ago, and someone's talking about it in Bali. That was an incredible party. There was just like so much with that playing, and I don't want to whatever. The most influential and crazy and my favorite place to play and the feeling is public service.
I can
And
understand that.
it's because it's the most organic, beautiful, best sounding too. This last one, Carl had that shit dialed the fuck in. It was because I love a system that can really thump. And I love to play to at certain moments in the night or the party is to push certain frequencies a little bit over, just a little bit. So like this part is really high, it's the highs and the hi hats, and I like to push it where like it hurts for a second, and then
Ow.
bah, and it's like, oh, we did that shit there. Um, and I remember like having a gig, one of these public services, like I had to play a gig like in Chicago the next day. And I played some of the same songs and they didn't get any of that reaction. And I was like, there it goes to show you, man. I'm playing it, I'm playing it. and these
It's a
people
different
are not
energy.
listening,
Yeah.
you know, and this is a dud. Because yesterday there was like 700 people losing their shit when I played this, and there's like 17 people here that couldn't care less, you know.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay. Continuing in, and since you are the most, no, the listener with the most listens,
Yeah.
you should know these questions. Can you name me 3 tracks that you've,
I forgot about that. I
yeah.
remember when you asked me, I was like, oh, start thinking about this shit. And I forgot
See? Welcome.
about it.
Where yeah, I think I switched it up actually last time. Where usually it's like 3 tracks that, you know, you associate with dance. It could be you or somebody else. And it could also be like records that you played or that you heard.
3 records
Yeah.
that I associate with dancing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly. But here's it's usually like, oh God, and then once you start, all of a sudden you're at number 10.
yeah. I mean, it's just like I'm getting hit with like 17 at once. I think for me, I'll say like when I hear Purple Music by Prince, that'll make me dance right away. Like that brings something out of me where I'm just like,
that's a good one.
yeah, like there is also there's just so much. All right. What do I say? If I can only pick 3,
It could be pick 4 or 5, but
okay.
that you know.
How about I just say like records right now that make me
Yeah.
feel that I'm excited about that dancing and stuff like that. Something that really just hits me in my core is I've been playing Jack Master Bang. It's on Trax Records, like from the 80s. It's a
Back
Chicago record.
then.
Yeah. That shit just fucks me up, bro. That shit makes me want to like bang. Yeah, it makes me just like it does something. Even the way I dance, I dance differently to that, and it brings something out.
Question, side note. Obviously, you are very what's the word? Energetic when you play.
Mm-hmm.
That's at least how I
Mm-hmm.
remember seeing you. But then when you move differently, does the record do something different to you when you dance to the record versus when you play it? Even though you dancing at the same time, but you behind the booth versus you on the dance floor.
Honestly, the record itself does the same thing. It's just my position is: am I driving the car or am I in the passenger seat? And then how close am I to the speakers? Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like that is something that that one is something that like fucks me up. I love. I don't know. There's just so many. I know I hate saying that. I hate that I'm saying there's so many. There's salsa records.
Yeah.
There's this musician that um, that is a hero of mine. His name is Pedrito Martinez. He's a Cuban percussionist, and he is like probably at the like one of the best in the world. I used to see him play. So that's how you ever heard of Axel Tosca? He plays piano.
Oh yeah.
He plays with. I knew Axel and I knew of him because he used to play with Pedrito, and they used to play.
Okay.
Pedrito used to play every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at this place called Guantanamera on like by Columbus Circle.
Okay.
And he has a lot of his music really makes me, even though I know how to dance salsa. I know how to like do the steps. I don't know how to lead because I was never taught how to lead. Um, so he has a song called La Luna, and that shit I play. I try to play in the beginning of my sets and stuff like that. It brings something out of me where it just like makes me, it's yeah, that like that Afro-Cuban timba with jazz kind of stuff. Like that shit makes me think of dancing, think of dance, and like what that energy does, and makes me want to dance for sure. And then like I guess I've been playing in Charisma is such a sweet dude. Is Work It Out. The That shit, I love playing that. I try to save that for the very end. Sometimes I just want to play it right away. Because growing up in the church too, like I've
Yeah, it
been through
makes
that
sense.
shit, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
And so I'm just like,
And
fuck
it's also such a, I mean, I haven't interviewed him for this podcast yet, but as he said before, it's such a personal record because he literally made it for himself because whatever he was working through and then, picked
it.
up,
So
but
powerful.
it's such a
And you got a
powerful,
light bill too, and you got a gas bill too.
all the
And
bills.
yeah, yeah. And it's just like, God, yeah. That shit hits me so hard. Yeah. Those are
Those
some.
are great examples. I have think two more questions. So
You can
one
ask
is
as many as you
more,
want, so
I
I'm
know,
chilling.
but we unfortunately don't
Oh,
have all
okay.
the time, and they're starting to bump music downstairs. That's usually the cue.
All right.
Um, One is, are there any? This is probably gonna come out the end of this year, early next year.
The what?
This is this
Okay.
podcast, this episode. So you mentioned already you have a new album coming out next year. Is there any other project that you are excited or willing to share
Yeah.
that you have coming up that is maybe also different from all the other 50 projects that you're already doing, that you want to share
Yeah,
with
I
us?
have a couple things. So like I don't know if this would already have come out by then, but me and my sister we wrote a song together.
Oh,
That we're
nice.
putting out. It's gonna be like Toribio featuring Shirin. A Track is gonna put it out on the label that him and his brother have called Juliet.
Mhm.
Um, and it's a song that me and my sister wrote. She wrote most of it. I just added. I came up with the title part. And I did two versions of the same song because I feel like it's that powerful, and musically, I want to take it in different places. Uh, and Cracker Zach he did a remix, and it sounds great.
Nice.
And that's gonna come out, I think, in November at some point. Um, I just did a remix for Butcher Brown, which is like a dope band that's based out of Richmond. And Spinna did a remix for them too.
Okay.
Me and Muscle Cars, we've been working on music for a while. We've been working. That's how that happened on their album
Yeah.
that track we did together. And we're working on a track. We're almost finished with Roland Clark.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I don't know where it's gonna come out yet, and I can't wait to share that though because it's I love it. It sounds really dope. And yeah, I think that's that for now. Yeah, and I'm trying to finish this album, and then I'm also like gonna put out some. I have some more edits to put out, but I don't want to like put out too many edits right away, you know. And yeah, I think that's what I have from the top of my head right now. Oh, I have another song that I did with my friend Peter Matson, who he has this band called Underground System.
Oh, yeah, I've
Yeah,
heard
yeah.
of them.
He's putting out an album. I wrote on that. I also did something with Jean Tellum out of Montreal. Oh, and me and Marquez, they're like a duo from Amsterdam. We wrote a song. We kind of like basically I kind of like wrote a song, but it was inspired, and they kind of like arranged it. I don't know where that's gonna come out though, but we got to talk about that. I think it's gonna come out. It's gonna come out next year. Um, yeah, and the Conclave album.
Wow.
Mhm.
So I just had a question since you mentioned the song with your sister. I wonder how your family feels about your musical journey, but then also your sister, and then you guys collaborating.
Yeah, I didn't even get to mention this enough, but it's just like my sister's the oldest. She's the older one, right? And they've always supported both of us in doing music. But Shirin, she's an amazing vocalist. She was like the singer at church, and everyone would like. And she was a girl drummer, and so and in a church, like like first up putting jeans on was like a fucking scandal,
Yeah.
and playing drums, and she could play guitar and songwriting and all this stuff. And so they've always supported her, and I feel personally that like throughout our whole life, it's always been more like that's what she does. You play drum. I'm the drummer. I went to school for drums and percussion, and I feel like them seeing my dad doesn't speak English or any of this shit, you know. So he sees what happens, but he doesn't understand like really what's going on, you know. But he sees that things are happening and people love me and they care, and to see me and my sister. And when I showed him that song, my mom has great taste in music because she came to New York when she was 7. So she like loves always loved Earth, Wind and Fire and Prince and all R&B. R&B. She likes house. So I named one of the tracks, one of the songs that's going to be on the album after her because she likes it. Because I played it for her, and she's like, "I like this one,"
Oh, that's sweet.
and she has good taste. Like she knows. So I showed her this song that's coming out with my sister, and she was like, "Can you give it to me right now?" But she doesn't know how SoundCloud works or not even Spotify. Has to be YouTube probably for her.
The private
But
link.
they you know they love it because as a kid, me and Shading, we used to be in our garage, and we just come back from DR. We used to go to DR every year. When I was a kid, I used to go to DR like 3 times a year because my mom used to work for Continental Airlines, and so we would go for free. So every summer I was there for 3 months. Every Christmas, maybe like some other time I'd be there, you know. And we come back with like a tambora, which is like a Dominican drum, and a guira, which is like the metal other percussive instrument. And me and my sister would just be in the garage. I'm like at 6 years old. I'm 6. He's probably like 12 or something. And we're just like singing. Yeah, we're just singing and jamming because I didn't really have as much video games or anything. I just love doing that, you know. And then our neighbor would come from across the street and he would bring like a cowbell or some shit. So we've always been doing music together, you know. And then it got to a point in the church where I was playing drums and she was singing, and then that's where I started singing in the church, you know. And sometimes we would do shit together, and so they've always seen it, and our parents like definitely, uh, they love it, man. They cry.
Oh,
They don't get it though. My
I
mom
like
does
it.
though.
I love that. Yeah, and then my last question is just for you to tell me what I haven't asked you enough, or if there's anything else that we haven't spoken about that you want to say. And I'm sure there's a lot.
I feel like there's a lot, but I can't think of exactly what points. I feel like I was very long winded. So
No, 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 not at all. I think the I was gonna say the more long winded, the better,
mhm.
which is generally I'm not sure if that's true, but
Yeah,
I like there's always a backstory to things, so I think it's important
yeah,
to explain these things.
yeah. I don't know. I think like one thing we didn't talk about is like how I from Pasha I started working in the restaurant industry, and then
Oh
from
God.
there I became the manager at Black Flamingo,
Ah,
which is a
okay,
venue in
okay.
Williamsburg. For people who don't know,
Yeah.
it was like a small club, still is, in a restaurant. And from that, it's really interesting because I'm still seeing people now that are coming to me and they're giving me compliments. They're like, "Hey, it's great to see your success. I remember you were the manager at Flamingo," and so they think of me as the manager at Flamingo, and I was like, I was just a musician that needed a job, and and I happened to be the manager here. You know what I mean? Like for me, as I was always still working on music, playing drums, and doing all this other shit. But obviously, they didn't see that, you know. But it was that was very influential to me because I got a lot of opportunities, and I got to also see what it is to be on the back end of things, see what a hassle it is in New York right now to have a venue. Like, I don't wish that on anybody. Like the you got the Department of Health, the Department of Buildings, the FDNY, they're all like trying to take money from you. And it's hard to have a space, you know, bringing it full circle about that's why the parks are so important because we have free access to a space like that. But also seeing, again, like I remember people would be like, oh, this is the fee? Like, you guys are making $1 million a weekend. And it's just like, man, if you really knew, like, you would be surprised. You would be surprised. And I think some people might have a little bit of an understanding during COVID when there was a lot of, and you see a lot of places that closed down. And shout out to Bryce for keeping that place still going because he had to switch, he had to pivot, and he has the restaurant upstairs called Ensenada, which is really incredible. It's really, really good seafood, and the club still exists downstairs. But it's really interesting to see the city change around it and see how things, this is like output showed up, then Flamingo came up after, right? But this was like one of the first of like the small spaces, and like, oh, now there's a bunch of small spaces. And then you see like things change where like it's hard to I don't want to like call out other venues, but it's just like it's hard to see the influx because it's saturated right now. I think we're
Yeah.
at a place in New York where there's
It's
more and more clubs,
enough.
which is kind of a good thing. But I feel like few of them are doing the right thing or are doing it the right way or actually intentionally care, you know. And it's kind of interesting to see how things have changed where the switch happened after COVID, where the new kids are coming in, where you know, like it's interesting to see for me too. Is just being like, oh, these are the kids that like boss says their home, and I'm like, no, that was mine. But it was like, oh, but it's like, oh, this is I'm not there anymore. You know what I mean? It's just like interesting to see. Oh, this is the new situation that's happened there, and that was a good understanding too to see understand when you're booking a place the different what makes a good booker, I think, and this is
Ooh, let's talk about that.
yeah, what makes a good booker is uh not so much about being catering to your tastes. Like, yeah, you have to be a tastemaker at some sense, but it's like even the shit you don't like, knowing if it's good and if it brings people together. You know, there was like that's where I learned about a lot of different scenes that I wasn't into, and be like, oh, but they have a good party. Like, yeah, like cool, like you know, and then you need to give a good place, a good booker gives all of these people nights because you don't want to do the same thing for yourself every night because the people that came last night, they're not coming tonight, you know?
Yeah.
So we need to switch it up. So how you need to get if whatever, how many people through this door, and then switching it up with different scenes. With this, if you like deep soulful house, as a booker, you should know who the techno kids are, who's good there, who you think is good, and who needs an opportunity, and who has a crowd, and who can who do you want to give it? There's not enough opportunities I feel of people getting opportunities to build stuff. You know, you kind of already have to have it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
But I also understand it's kind of hard too. If you like just opened up and your rent is 20,000, it's just like I can't invest in you as much. But there needs to be some middle ground. But yeah, I don't know. That's one of the things. Was just like thinking about where the back end of how it works, what the margins are actually like, and where the money actually goes and where it comes from. You know, you might see one night when you play and it's good or whatever, but it doesn't mean last night was, you know. And you're like, damn, this sucks. It's just like, yeah, man, if you did great, then you helped pay for last night. And if this place is, you know, if this place is like a place that primarily makes their money from a club, something I learned in Pasha too. Pasha had 2 nights, sometimes 3, to make their whole money for the week, you know? It's just like, that's a lot of pressure on one night, you know?
Yeah.
As opposed to just being like, hey, I'm a cafe that's open 5 days a week and I can live off of having $200 come in every day, you know? But it's like, no, I need fucking 50,000 to come in
Yeah.
on Friday and another 50 on Saturday, you know?
'Cause one messed up Friday is
Yeah, and then we're fucked, you know? And then it's really, yeah, I think that was really influential on me on learning the business side of things. And I feel like that lacks with a lot of people. And I feel like that should be shared. But also a lot of people aren't trying to, sometimes people aren't trying to hear that, you know? But it's something to think about for everyone, I think,
yeah.
is like how a business, you should, if you like, be honest with yourself and genuinely be like, how is this business being run? Like, how much money do you think this bar makes at the end of the night? How many people do you actually think are in here? You know, like, I think that'll help bring people together and be like, okay,
Yeah.
you know,
At least
more
it gives you
empathy.
an understanding
Yeah.
now to then yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, I don't know. And I don't know, I guess that's basically it. I've always felt like for me it's still a slow burn and I'm still working on it, you know. And I'm always I feel grateful every gig I have and every opportunity. I don't take that for granted. I'm not just saying that because I've never felt like I had like a moment where I was a favorite, you know. I feel like it's been a slow burn, which is my path, and it's been good. And I think it's important to understand, like, you know, at the end of the day, you're playing at these different spaces, and yeah, you should feel that I need to play there too, but it's also like it's not your place. And so if you get it, you should be grateful, you know, and kill it.
Yeah, right. Well, that's all it on my part.
Yeah.
Thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, I do as well.